stay in charge, not only like time wise, but definitely also cost wise.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, like you said about the app, like there's so many costs associated with it. Like you said, it's expensive that like you don't even think of. Like if you asked a non-technical person about building an app and you said, "Oh, well, how are you going to pay for like the database costs?" Because that's not cheap.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
so, but
No.
yeah. So with no code MVP, obviously like you have something built. You know, I did see some tweets. People were talking it up and they love what you're doing. So what's your long-term vision of no code MVP? What's the same? What's different?
Good one. Yeah, no, I think there's two goals here. So one goal was also again really personally, just like with Startup Stash. So I had this idea for the course like 2.5 years ago, and I started working on it. Or no, like I think 2 years ago. So 2 years ago today, I posted it on beta list, and with the goal of getting in total, I wanted to get like 500 subscribers in order to be convinced that I should pursue this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's why I put it on beta list. But the motivation was personally. So I thought, okay, well, there's again a lot of stuff in my head that I think is, uh, right, or the right approach, or hopefully the most valuable approach to creating new things. And I wanted to combine that with these no code tools and just get everything out of my head and into like a structured format. Um, just to do that once, also to clear my head of all these other things that I was reading and thinking about. I just wanted to do that for once. So a little bit therapeutical, I think, is the first goal, and the other goal is really like, and I already saw that in people that have already joined my course, is to really help people um, in these really early phases. Like there have been people that now joined the course that have burned thousands of dollars. There's one guy who already spent like 1,000 or 100K US dollars on this idea that he has, and he hasn't made any dollar in revenue. And you can laugh about it, but it's not a dumb guy, right?
Yeah.
It's about the approach that he took, or the belief that he has in his idea. And all these things are logical, but I hope my course can help him to structure his path in a better way, or maybe even come to the conclusion that this is not the right idea, and then start work on another idea. So and my goal is to find more people like him, but before they spend way too much money in pursuing the wrong thing. I think that's like the secondary mission, because I've seen a lot of super smart and motivated people, not I don't want to say take the wrong steps, but um, judge their steps or what they've been doing in a way that is not helping them to actually move forward. And so I think that's like my secondary goal, to help as much people as possible. And if even one person who follows this course turns their idea that's now in their head into a big company, that would be the best outcome that I can imagine.
Yeah. No, for sure. That's awesome. That would be definitely an for the guy that spent 100K so far. Um, that would be a really cool story if if he used what you taught and managed to turn things around.
Yeah, we'll see. But I mean, it's just so interesting to hear that someone spent that amount of money on something that has along the way not given him enough proof to really objectively say, I have to continue this, or I have to just quit pursuing this um, idea. I mean, it exists, it's out there, and those are the types of people that I really want to help.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said about finding these other people, it's like in my opinion, I mean, we've had Wix and all these other, no code tools for quite a long time, but I feel like more recently, like the no code space is kind of blowing up, and I think that in terms of the no code space, I think we're still in infancy right now,
Yeah,
and it's gonna
yeah.
be, there's gonna be a lot to come, and it's kind of exciting. So
Yeah, totally. It's super early, and I think there's a lot of people who also say, no code has always been there. Like Excel is no code, and I think that's all true. Like there was visual programming in the 90s and whatever. But I think um, these tools are getting more accessible. So your example is Wix for or you have Squarespace.
Hmm.
To be honest, I never got Squarespace. Like I can't use it. I don't know why, but I just can't use it. So I think the market of the tools is getting broader. So there's more for everyone. There's different types of tools. Like learning curves are starting really small or low, like Card, and a little bit higher, like Webflow or Bubble, even Zapier, or these other automation tools like Parabola or Integromat. Um, and so there's just more to choose from. So I think there's more tools. That's one. And secondary, the conversation around what can you actually do with these tools is also picking up. And I think especially the second one is what's driving the no code movement. Like more people talking about um, what you can actually do with all these tools.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, it's crazy too to think like, I mean, so I go to college and I'm out in Pittsburgh, and like I've talked to friends that you know that are in like business majors or developers, whatever. And I talk to them and I've asked them, a couple of times. I've asked them, numerous times. I'm like, have you ever heard of like no code or like um, tools like Bubble or Parabola or like any of these like tools that basically allow you
Yeah.
to do more complex things, and none of them have heard of them, which
No.
it's pretty mind-boggling. But I think we'll start to see that shift to mainstream. I think eventually here.
Yeah, totally. I think also one of my goals would be to move more in that direction, because I think like people in what I would call the maker crowd, or whatever you want to call it, they are like motivated and internet literate enough to find a lot of solutions that they can use themselves, or also find resources where they can read and learn stuff. But I think the people that you just mentioned, like more like business majors or people in product, people in marketing, are even a bigger opportunity as to what you could call a market for no code tools, but also things like the course that I created.
Yeah, even universities. I mean, imagine a
Man,
no-code class in school.
dude, I got a message yesterday from a guy who's teaching at USC in
Hmm.
California, and next semester he's going to teach a entrepreneurship minor, and a big part of that minor is going to be no code tools. So we're going to discuss how we can work together.
That's awesome.
So that for me that was super interesting to hear. Like I'm totally on board with that. So I personally also did a minor in entrepreneurship when I was studying, and I think this was the biggest thing that was missing. Like knowing how to turn your entrepreneurial idea, whatever it is, even if it's like a offline physical service,
Hmm.
how can you create digital assets for that? And that's where no code definitely provides enough value, especially for like the early stages of new ideas.
Absolutely. So this leads to my next question, actually.
Cool.
Um, so there's other platforms like New Code and MakerPad. So what makes No Code MVP different than those?
Yeah, so I actually have a deal with MakerPad with Ben,
Hmm.
and I also tweeted about this yesterday. Like I think they're super complementary. Like a platform like MakerPad just shows you everything that you could do with no code tools, what you can build, like also all these different types of tools. And I think my course is complementary in a way that um, I am talking about the stage before that more than them. Like what do you want to create? Who are you creating this for? What are the steps that you can take to turn your big idea into something small that you can test and validate with real people, and then build with a set of affordable and easy to learn tools. So for my course, I just chose a stack of tools that most are free, Google Sheets, Google Docs, or at least free to start with. And then obviously Card and Zapier are also in there, and Stripe. I think if I look at my course, 35% is about the tools, and like 65 or maybe even more is about the approach of getting your big idea out of your head and into a structured framework that will help you to turn it into something that you can build and validate yourself.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually. I like how, because a lot of the times people who are like trying to build their first thing, they really don't understand like customer validation and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, no, totally true. And I think also combined with, this is really my personal belief. If you know what you need to build and how you deliver what value, then it doesn't really matter what that first product looks like. What I said before, I've worked with a team who created this calculation model for real estate. So real estate objects, and their MVP basically was sitting down with someone who invested in real estate, and that person gave them some information about the object that they wanted to calculate the value for. So the total purchase value, but also the value per square meter. And they would just sit at a table, the startup team with a laptop and the investor on the other side, and the investor just gave them the data of the object, and they ran that through their model, and then they said, okay, our model is done. We've calculated these valuations, and then the investor gave them money, and then they turned around the laptop to show the results, or actually the value that the investor was looking for, and that was basically their MVP, and that's what they did a few dozen times before they turned that more into an actual product where you could, send data to digitally on your phone or on the web.
That's interesting. Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
And so that's I think it's funny whenever I tell this story, people are like, okay, but that doesn't sound like an MVP or a product or whatever. But to me, the product is a combination of talking to the right person, telling them the right message, figuring out how to deliver the value that they are looking for, while you're validating whatever you're trying to validate. In this case, it was our investors willing to pay for evaluation report, and then the other part of that product, in quotes, is how am I going to build a relationship with that person? So during my MVP experiment, I did this once. I'm talking about the team. So the team delivered the value to this investor once. Like, how are you going to stay in touch with them, or how can they stay in touch with you? Like, can they send you more objects? But also, when your product evolves, how can you get in touch with them again to show them, the next iteration of the solution that you're creating? And, all these things that I'm now mentioning, that's already like a lot of work and takes a lot of time before you even figure out if people are willing to pay for the solution that you think you should create for them.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. I like that. That's a good story. Earlier, you said about how we touched on Wix, and then you said about how like visual programming with Excel and stuff like that. I was actually on a phone call with Eric from Bubble, and he left me on this question, and I want to ask you this question: is what is your definition of no code?
Yeah, and maybe no code is not the right definition. I don't know. I've seen some fun discussions, and also just now on Twitter, I tweeted about that. There's a few lines of code in the course, but that I didn't actually write these lines of code. I'm using this tool on the internet that turns my text into HTML. So, and then I think it was Joe who replied like, well, you still used a no-code tool to create code, so that works. So maybe I'm on board with like that definition, using certain type of tools that are